For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Gerard Martinez for instant analysis of USC's Elite Camp. Now, Elite Camp is different from Rising Stars Camp. Elite Camp is where it's a smaller group, around 60 players today came out, and it's where USC kind of models a USC practice. You get to see these prospects essentially go through a tryout of what it would be like to be a Trojan. Gerard, for you, what was your general overview of the day, and who were your top performers?
Well, it was an interesting day. Like you said, only 60 players, so it was one of those camps that we get to really evaluate each player, and it's not, 1,000, 2,000 sometimes. That kind of has been what the Rising Stars camp has become. So this is the new Elite Camp. This is the new camp where USC is really bringing in the players they want to be able to coach them up. They want to be able to evaluate them, but they also want to have that relationship a little bit with them, with that coaching player relationship with a lot of kids. It's big in their recruitment because they want to feel comfortable. I think in terms of top performers, one of the guys that really stood out to me, a guy that we really haven't seen a whole lot of, was Caleb McCullough out of Pacifica High School in Oxnard, 6'3", about 215 pounds, linebacker, a guy that really plays really well in space for his size. It was interesting watching him. He's got that length. He's a guy that you could probably put at the predator type position, but he can also play inside, outside linebacker. He's got the height, the length, the speed. I was watching him in the transitions against the tight ends and the running backs, and he just looked great. He looked great just in every position. He looked great in one-on-ones. Great looking kid off the hoof. A guy that doesn't have a scholarship offer right now from USC. I think that definitely changes at the end of the day. It probably has already changed as we speak. I mean, he's definitely a guy that's a scholarship level player for USC. Another guy, walking into the gates that everybody sees coming straight away is Corey Foreman. The big underclassman, 2021 kid from Corona Centennial, defensive end, about 6'4", 240, 250 pounds, a kid that just dominated one-on-ones. Certainly the offensive line group wasn't all that strong, but a guy that still everywhere we've seen him, at the opening, regional, etc., he's been very dominant, and I think that's continued here today, and it wasn't really anything new. It was kind of what we expected. He got a lot of love from Johnny Nansen after the camp, and a guy that USC is in the lead for, and they want to continue to hold on to his interest and be the lead dog for. I think a couple other interesting players that we saw. Trayshawn Holden actually played a little bit receiver and defensive back. He's the big receiver out of Narbonne, committed to Alabama, 6'3", 210 pounds, a big, strong, fast receiver. Was probably more dominant at some of the other events that we've seen, but he doesn't really have to show a whole lot to USC right now. I think he's one of those guys that they're really on, committed to Alabama. Obviously that's a big deal. Alabama's been a great football program. They've been a franchise really for the last decade, but USC's working on him, and he seems really comfortable with USC, and he was out here. He actually got a little banged up, and I give him a lot of credit for this. He got really banged up. He went down, kind of got up real slow. I thought, ooh, that might be like a legit injury. Kind of limped off the sidelines, and a couple plays later, he was back in there, played DB, and got an interception. So, he doesn't have to be here at this camp, and he came out and he competed. His teammate Josh Jackson, also out here from Narbonne, committed to USC, 6'2", 185 pounds. Played really well, looked smooth in his transitions. He looked like Josh Jackson. He's the kind of receiver you can kind of put all over the field. You can put him in the slot, you can put him out wide, and he looked really good today. So he was another player that I thought really showed well, and another guy that didn't necessarily have to be out here, but was out here anyways just to compete, and you like to see that. The other commit, Bryce Young, again, sort of like Josh Jackson. You kind of know what to expect from Bryce Young. Yeah. He gave exactly what you expect from him, threw a really pretty ball, was a guy that, when you saw those receivers get open and get separation and the ball was there on time, guess who threw it? You look back, it's Bryce Young. So, all those guys, I think look really good. I think Caleb McCullough was probably the guy that sort of stood out the most as, we haven't seen a whole lot of him, and this was a great stage for him to show that he is among the elite.
Yeah, so now that we have your top performers, let's dive in a little bit deeper, go position by position. You already mentioned Bryce Young, but as quarterbacks go, who else stood out to you?
Jake Garcia was a little hit and miss. He threw some really good balls, but then kind of threw some balls out there where I don't know if he just had some miscommunication or some timing issues with the receiver. He's a guy that's got all the talent in the world, but didn't necessarily connect and maybe was pushing it a little bit too much. I think one thing we see from quarterbacks out here, and we saw this from Kedon Slovis last year at both the elite camps, one camp, and it was early camp. He was out here with Ryan Helinski, and he seemed to be forcing it a little bit. He was pressing too much, and he didn't look very good. And he came out in the second camp, was a little more at ease. He had gone through the drills before, knew what to expect, and he looked really good. And so I think that's kind of the thing you got to take into consideration with these quarterbacks in terms of, whether they're really pressing a little bit too much and they're kind of in their own heads about throwing the ball. But Jake Garcia is a guy from Narbonne, underclassman 2021, is a guy that, you're going to have to watch for in the future. And I think, the talent is definitely there, but this wasn't his best day.
Mm-hmm. Let's group it together, wide receivers and DBs. Who did you see who stood out to you?
It was interesting. Darian Green-Warren kind of started off real slow, came in a little late and kind of took a little while to go. I like what I saw from him when he was in there and he was, actually competing and taking reps in one-on-ones. It was interesting because, Chris Hawkins, the new graduate assistant defensive backs coach, was a little bit in his ear, seemed to be a little frustrated with him, wanted him to do more. It looked like Darian was a little injured. I don't know if there's like a hip pointer, hip flexor type of issue or a groin. He looked like he was a little slow, and so maybe he was just injured a little bit. But I liked what I saw from him in spots, but then in other things, you kind of wished you saw more reps from him. John Humphrey, the defensive back from Eure High School, a guy that has a scholarship offer from USC, he was a little, inconsistent as well. He looked good a little bit in one-on-ones. In position drills, he struggled a little bit. Looked like he was a little awkward just in terms of technique and in terms of catching the football. Those were the kind of things when the ball came at him, he was a little flustered and everything. And so it's kind of watching him. He's got great length. He's got pretty good speed. I see why USC's on him early, but we're going to have to see him develop a little more. Certainly, I think from a technique standpoint, this was a little bit of an eye-opener for him. From a competition standpoint, it was a little bit of an eye-opener for him. I don't think you see guys like Trayshawn Holden come rolling through when you're playing at Eure and you haven't been playing football that long, and so that was a little bit much for him. So I think it was kind of Josh Jackson, Trayshawn Holden. There's a few other guys mixed in there. We'll get more into depth in that with some of our reports, but that was kind of the was the guys that you expect to come out and play well. Those are the guys that came out and played well.
Yeah, you mentioned these already, running backs and linebackers. Again, who stood out to you?
Yeah, running backs, not really anybody there. It was a real small group. I think there was only 4 running backs at this camp, to kind of emphasize how small the camp is and how intimate the camp is. Linebackers for sure, yeah. McCullough. Caleb McCullough was definitely the guy. Kind of hard not to focus in on him. I did like 2021 tight end from Northern California, Jermaine Terry. He's a guy that you definitely ought to look for in the future. Good body, really good control, caught the ball well. He was really the only guy that had the body and I think the physicality to be able to play against a guy like McCullough and try to get in the flats and catch a couple balls on him. So I like Jermaine Terry. I think he's a guy that USC is going to be on. I don't think they've offered him a scholarship yet. He's probably another guy that's going to be in line to get a scholarship offer.
And last, certainly not least, the big men, O-line and D-line. What do you see from that grouping? Yeah,
the offensive line, it's a development group. Certainly, I think we're looking across the board. This was mostly a local camp. There wasn't a lot of big-time out-of-state guys. The one out-of-state guy was probably the most impressive on the offensive line. That was Joey Wright from Reno, Nevada, about 6'6", 270 pounds. Really good frame, really carries his weight well. Looks like he could definitely put on 300 pounds easy and still move. He was the most impressive guy, and certainly he kind of off the hoof looked the most impressive. On the defensive line, you really can't go wrong with Corey Foreman. I mean, he had an easy day today. There really wasn't anybody there. Jeffrey Percy was there. There was a couple other linemen that were there, but nobody really could handle Corey Foreman. Jay Toya was also here playing interior defensive line, and I thought he looked good in parts. He looked good in certain position drills and other position drills. I think he was getting a little winded. I think he, just in terms of shape, that's the one thing about this camp. I mean, even more than I think a regular USC practice, they really go fast.
Yep.
And they really push these guys hard. And if these kids haven't been doing their conditioning and everything in high school at this point for spring ball, they're going to be so tired. And I think Jay is just, probably a little overweight and he got a little winded. But when he got time to kind of focus in on his drills, he looked pretty good. He looked quick. I mean, he's a big guy. He's probably 330, 340, and still pretty explosive. It's going to be interesting to see, though. He does play guard at high school, Grace Brethren High School, and there's always potential of him playing guard in college, too. So we'll see how that sort of develops over the next couple of years. He's still a guy that, he's got 2 years ahead of him here, or he's got a year ahead of him. He's 2021. He's been committed for 2 years.
Yeah.
It feels like he's been, you're like, like, oh, Jay, are you like going to be on campus yet here? I mean, you've been committed forever.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes with him. But he was okay, a tad inconsistent. But again, you know, it was one of those things. There were certain guys at positions that just stood out and separated themselves so much it was hard not to just watch them.
Yeah. As you mentioned, this is an intimate camp. When it comes to recruit versus USC, who gets the most out of a camp like this?
You know, I think it's beneficial to both because really with the recruits, it's a comfort thing and they want to have a relationship with their coaches, and that comes over to the field and how they have chemistry and how coaches approach certain situations, how they reprimand, how they get into developing on the field. Okay, this is what you did wrong. This is how you correct it. And all of that's very important. And so when a kid has that feel for the coach on the field, it's very important for that player just to know what they're getting into with that coach. But it's also important for the coach because he's trying to sort of present, you know, himself. It's sort of a little bit of an audition for him. Hey, this is how it is at USC. This is really how it's going to be. It's not a traditional camp where everybody's breaking up into groups and doing this. It's like a regular practice. And so the kids really get to go through it. They get to see how it really is. And the coaches get that chance, that stage to be able to show what they have.
Now, this is not going to be a new update to Peristyle members. We posted this on Tuesday, but we did confirm that Brew McCoy and Chris Steele are on campus. We saw them today. What did you take away from seeing them?
They look comfortable. They looked at home. Brew was getting some paperwork done. He actually headed over, I think, to admissions. Chris Steele was out there at the camp and on the field just hanging out with all the players and hanging out with Greg Johnson and Kyle Ford and John Houston and that whole little group of guys. Tyler Eccles was there, or Hunter Eccles, excuse me. Tyler Vaughns was out there as well. It was just a group of guys that just all know each other for a long time, and I think that's certainly something that's probably was missing for both of those kids, Brew and Chris Steele. It was funny because some of those guys you could tell had not seen Chris Steele really yet on campus. Like there were people coming up and greeting him and saying, "Oh yeah, hey Chris, what's going on?" But they just seemed comfortable. It was all smiles. Chris's mom was here with them. I think they're going through some stuff, again, still paperwork stuff, but both of them have moved into their dorms, and they're here. We'll see, you know, how everything goes. You know, they were at Texas and Florida at one time as well, so it was one of those things where somebody said, you know, he's here, Chris Steele's here, but until he gets his first interception for USC, you know, we'll just wait and see. You know, we're not going to get too committed into anything at this point, but I think, you know, those guys were all smiles, and it definitely seemed like it was very familiar for them. And they've been here before, they've been to these camps, they've been around USC, and it's just second nature, and that was obviously something missing for them at Florida and Texas.
Yeah. Alrighty, any final thoughts before we wrap it up here at USC?
No, great camp. Always loved this camp just really because of the small number of kids that we get to see and we get to focus on these kids. We got plenty of video. We're going to have plenty of photos. We're going to have more analysis and some follow-up interviews just from the camp. But this was really not necessarily, most of these kids that are at this camp had scholarship offers. There's a handful that I think that will probably still get scholarship offers from it. Like I said, Caleb McCullough is a guy, definitely. Jermaine Terry's another guy. But we'll see how that goes. But it's sort of, the last final push here until we get into the dead period, which is in July for USC, and they end up going and all the coaches go on vacation. So this is sort of the beginning of the end, I guess, a little bit here. We get into the end of June.
Yep. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's Elite Camp. For Gerard Martinez, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.